What's going on, everybody? Charge the Line, episode number 13, I think. 13 weeks straight, we've been dropping episodes, having different guests. We also have our different segments out there, so appreciate everybody tuning in. Today, we're going to do something a little different. Been getting some questions online, on Facebook, through some of our social media stuff, and I've been wanting to do a Q&A for some time now. So, you know, what better time than now? Me and Tony just finished a workout in my garage, and we got our protein shakes going, and we're just here chilling, lounging, ready to answer some questions that everybody might have. So, T, let's get started with you, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, and the best part is this protein shake, man. If your career as a firefighter and jiu-jitsu coach doesn't work out, man, you can work at any protein
I'll be
shake place.
Maybe I should open one up, you know?
Yeah.
That's always a possibility. Entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Well, T, you worked last night. I worked, got off shift. How was your evening?
Oh, it was great, man. It was good.
Yeah, ours too. Fortunately, the citizens in our area of town didn't call one time, so that's
Slept all night?
Yeah, got to sleep all
Always
night,
a blessing.
which is a blessing because we were out all day training, doing different things.
Y'all had the boat in the water yesterday, right?
Yeah. You know, we had the boat.
You guys, yeah.
For you guys that don't know, I'm part of the boat operations, boat specialty station for our department, and you know, I've never really driven a boat until I got out there, but I had the opportunity to promote and go to that station. So now I'm learning, and man, I tell you what, it's difficult. You know, it's not easy by any means, and it's just like we talk about with everything else. It's reps, right? Getting your reps in, being able to maneuver the boat. So now, you know, driving the boat's easy. It's navigating the waterways that is really where the challenge is, because you've got deep areas, you've got shallow areas, and you can't be getting stuck when you're in an emergency call. So that's kind of where I'm at now, with trying to figure out how to navigate everywhere and really getting that down, so that if I'm having to captain the boat, you know, I'm ready to go. So
The other thing we've always struggled with is just knowing the waters, right? You could live here your whole life and not know where to put in, where's safe to put in, where's safe to go, you know. And so it's like you said already, the reps and learning those routes to do, you know, to use, and where to stay away from. And it's not always like the bright sunny day when someone's in trouble. It's going to be at night, or it's going to be in that area.
Yesterday was high tide. Yesterday was nice. It was beautiful outside. So, you know, it's typically people don't, I shouldn't say don't have trouble on the nicer days, but you know, you always got those people that are, don't have too much common sense, that go out when they shouldn't, or stay out too long, and that's usually when you know, we have to respond to an emergency.
The other thing is too, it's becoming more and more popular. Like we were on the water over the weekend, and man, there were just like so many boats in the water.
Yeah,
they're everywhere.
Yeah, well, that's what Randy and John, my captain and my driver at my station, Randy and Carl. Randy and Carl. John's my old captain. Randy and Carl, they're always saying that, man, I mean, people will literally buy a boat and then you can take it straight out there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like they have no experience.
Yeah. Shouldn't I have a class or something?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Where do I go? Where do I not go?
There's none of that.
It's one of those things you just grow up and like, oh, we always go over here, you know. So now you're going over there. It's like we stay away from over here.
Exactly.
And so, of course, it's usually the ones that don't know that get themselves in a bad spot. But, you know, it is a huge resource, and I mean, we had a lot of rescues on those boats, on all the boats.
Yeah,
and it's a good thing that we took that on, because for a long time, man, we really weren't like letting we were letting you know, other agencies take care of that stuff. The Coast Guard, you know, right. Flower Bluff Fire Department, they have a boat. You know, they would go out, and it's like we finally took a role in this, and it's been good. It's been
it's been real beneficial, man.
Yeah,
a lot of training. A lot of good stuff has come out of it, but anyway, not to bore some of you guys that could care less about firefighting, but let's go ahead and get into some of your questions, man. We've got I think 5 or 6 questions that we're going to answer today from just different people that have tuned into the podcast. Some are friends, some are students, some are just acquaintances. some of these people that are on my Facebook or Instagram pages that have messaged me. So let's get to it, T.
Okay. All right. Question number 1 is from Jimmy. Thank you, Jimmy, for asking a question. And so he's saying that from the optic of a civilian, I guess the perspective of a civilian, in your opinion, is the quality of citizens produced by the military better or worse these days compared to before?
Man, we're starting off with a heavy one, right? We're starting off with a heavy topic, in my personal opinion as a civilian, and so let me state that first. He's asking my opinion as a civilian, not my opinion of what I feel about, our military as somebody that's actually involved. I've never served, and I'm very thankful that people are willing to do so. But what I do see, and I do talk to people. I do talk to people that are former military. I do talk to people that are active military. They keep me in the loop as far as some of the changes that are happening. And to be honest, everything that I've heard is not good. It seems like we are getting to a point with our military where it's really slim pickings, right? I was listening to Tim Kennedy talking about special forces and how the pool of people that they have to choose from now is much smaller than it's ever been. In fact, to where they're having to go out there and recruit and try and get these people to join these special branches and departments, where before it was, they had hundreds of applicants at some of these things. And the more applicants you have, the bigger talent pool that you have to pull from, right? So I think it's just a natural progression, and unfortunately not a good one, that we've gotten to a point where we don't have as many people wanting to serve in the military. Therefore, your choices to fill the spots are going to be limited. So that's just hearing from people that are active duty or people that have served. From my standpoint, I'm not. I know a couple of young guys that are going into the military. I used to do privates with a kid who was pretty squared away, and he was going into a program. He wanted to be a Navy SEAL, and apparently there's a program where you can fast track to that. But like I said, he was very squared away, very disciplined, very respectful, and a hard worker. So I have no doubt that he'll succeed. But I wonder if everybody that is applying has that same mindset, right? It's one of those things where, unfortunately, from a civilian standpoint, we don't see in it too well. The only thing I can compare it to is our department, is the fire service, right? Because I know that the numbers have dwindled, and we're kind of dealing with the same predicament. When I came in, I think there were almost 600 people that took the test. Now I think the last test had less than 200. So it's just a natural, like I said, a natural progression, where if you don't have, if you only have 100 people applying and you got to choose 30 people, well, it's common sense that if you have 500 people and you have to choose 30, it's going to be a much higher standard that you have, or that you're able to hold these.
Well, the standard's the same. It's just the quality of the applicant, right?
Okay, so you bring up a good point right there, right? Because the standard is the same, but have the standards changed? Now, I'm not talking about fire department. I'm talking about the military.
Yeah.
I talk about this in the fire department all the time, because I have people, what's it like to work with a girl, or what's it like to work with... Here's the thing. I don't give a shit if you're a man, woman. I don't care, what your all I care about is if you can do the job. Right. So when you start changing standards, and I've always said, a fire doesn't recognize whether you show up.
What shift it is,
who it is. Are they in shape? Are they out of shape? Yeah. Are they a girl? Are they a guy? It doesn't discriminate. And, unfortunately, I feel like the military does. I know that now we have women serving in the infantry. Great. But when you do that, you cannot lower the standard for those women to get in, because then the enemy doesn't care. And let's face it, war is ugly. It is not pretty. I mean, I've read a lot of I've done a lot of research and watched a lot of documentaries, read some books on warfare, and it is not the standard for warfare for our fighters, for our warriors, should be the highest, right? And I just wonder if that's going on.
So there was also some more background that Jimmy put in here. So let me read on. So a lot of kids join right after high school. They get out after 4 years. In my experience, the quality of citizens seems to have degraded over the years. Thoughts? Why? It is easy to say that the quality in was already bad, so out would be the same. But we both know that back in the day, some kids came from worse situations, did 5 years, got out, and they were amazing citizens. What's different?
Yeah. Man.
So he has some personal experience in there with, being in the military, being 5 years. That's where Jimmy's coming from. I know it's like cliche that we always, and it's in the fire service, like big time too. We always like, they don't make them like they used to. You heard that before, right?
Right.
Every generation, every, next class looks at the old class the old classes, look at the newer classes and say, man, they're not the same. We had it harder. We had it. And so that you have to kind of take that bias out, because that's, it's real easy. I think it's human nature to feel that way. But I will say, and let me just give my disclaimer too. I was not in the military. I got into the fire department very young. Just was pretty much right out of high school. Got into the fire service and never looked back. But I will say, in the position that I'm now, and I think I've mentioned it on the show, is that there's two groups of people that do really well in the fire department, and that's the groups that are people from the military, they're prior military, and people that did team sports. And so I think that just plays into what we do. I can't speak for everybody coming out and what kind of citizens they are, but I'll say that in the fire service, they're usually really successful. Those two groups, military and team sports. So there's something out of that translates over, right?
Exactly.
And so that's my answer to that.
Well, in what we do, we have to be. There is some structure.
We're considered paramilitary, right? That's that term that they always say, right?
Exactly.
And so what does that mean? It's like we have a rank structure. That means that we have a chain of command, but we also, sometimes I feel like it's probably not, it's kind of disgraceful to say that we're like the military. I mean, we're not deployed for months at a time. I mean, we go home,
Yeah, exactly. We go home, and ultimately, I mean, we talked about this morning, they thank us for our service, but in reality, it's I get a paycheck. I'm doing this, yes,
we love to do this,
and we love to do it, but I also am getting paid, to do it. Whereas people that are going to the military, yes, they're getting paid, but also, some of them are putting themselves in situations where it's literally life and death, So, all respect to them, but I do think that as a society, it's funny because there's that saying where hard times make strong men make easy times make weak men. Right. And there's so much truth to that. And we've discussed it before, talking about our kids. Mm-hmm. And although we want to make things easier for them, we've got to also learn where that balance is, because as a society, I feel like we've almost gotten to a point where we just don't want anybody to suffer. We don't want there is something to be said about suffering. There is something to be said about overcoming and pushing through and having. And the other
extreme, and it's you have a tattooed on your hand, and Jordan Peterson talks about all the time, is that life is suffering.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, and so if you look at it that way, different perspective altogether, is it shapes who you are by what you go through, right?
Well, let's face it. We're all going to suffer. There's not one person in this life that is not going to suffer. Your parents die. It hurts. You have a tragedy with a child and they die. It kills you. Yeah. You have cancer. You have, we got brothers that are going through it right now. So for us to not prepare ourselves for that, knowing that it's not when, or it's not if, it's when it comes to our door, are we going to be ready?
How are you going to respond to it?
Are we going to be hardened enough to where we're able to overcome and push through, or are we just going to fold under the pressure? And I feel like, getting back to the military, I feel like it's not necessarily just the military's fault. I feel it's just the society, the culture that we live in today. Now, where I do feel the military is failing, and I just saw this. And I'm not trying to get political because I try to stay out of politics. We hear enough bullshit about politics. I don't need this podcast to turn into that. But the Navy just released something saying that they don't want their people to refer or to use the word mom and dad. Or is it male and female?
I haven't seen this.
I've got to look.
We'll have to research it.
Man, I had it sent to me and I don't have, well, here it is. And what's crazy about that is that's where it comes to changing our standards to appease what is really a minority of people, right? Like there's not a lot of people that feel that way, but for some reason it's because they're making the loudest noise. It says Air Force Academy cadets told to stop using gendered terms like mom and dad. This is legit. This was like on the news. This is at the Washington Examiner. And this was on September 22nd of this year by Jeremiah Poff, who's an education reporter for the Washington Examiner. And this is out of the Air Force.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things like we talk about not pushing politics and, but it gets thrown in there. It gets all this stuff. Instead of focusing at the task at hand, they're telling these kids,
yeah, you can't get away from it. We can't
get
away from it.
But that's not that shouldn't be their focus. Mm-hmm. So in turn, you start focusing on shit like that, the important stuff is really going to start lacking.
Falls by the wayside.
And so to answer Jimmy's question, I don't know if we did in covering all that, but I think those are a few key points that we touched on that, show that we're not going down the best path, for
absolutely.
Military. So
yeah, thank you, Jimmy, for that. And hopefully we shed some light on what you were asking. Number 2 is from Erica. And Erica says, being a firefighter and a coach are some of the most selfless professions. What inspires you to put your needs/desires aside for the greater good of others?
Man, to put it in short, it's because people did it for me. People have helped me throughout my career, from coaches to different sponsors to students. It's one of those things for me being a coach, and I'm going to jump into coaching because firefighting, like I said, it has to be a calling for you. You're there to serve the community. Unfortunately, I feel like there's some people that jump into the service without actually realizing that. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people that take a very selfish standpoint, feeling like once they get hired, like they're owed something. And we've talked about this before as well. But what I can say from a martial arts standpoint is I've had so many people be selfless with me as coaches themselves that I feel it's kind of my time now to give back to them.
There was never that, and we see this in the fire department sometimes, where people hold information, I'm not going to show you this because then you'll know more than what I know. You never experienced that, and then if you did, you said, I don't want to be that way.
I actually did, man. I did, and I won't put it on blast out of respect. But I did face some of that. I did have a few coaches here and there that I could tell were holding back some things.
Holding their cards close.
And it's because we're all competitors and we're all alpha males. And what we do in the sport, you can't be a beta. You got to walk in and you have to know the smallest guy in the gym is still going to fight like the toughest dude out there.
Sounds like prison.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's and back in the time I grew up in and I came up in fighting, it was after the very first wave. But it was still super old school in the sense where we fought. We didn't train. We beat the shit out of each other to get ready for fights.
Right.
We had Santos who was a guest on the show, and there would be days where me and him showed up and we literally sparred 8-9 rounds with each other, just 5-minute rounds, just beating the shit out of each other for an hour, just back and forth.
Sounds like torture.
It wasn't, and it was, we were a little sick because we actually enjoyed it, but we got smarter as we got older, right? But there were those people, and that's something I always strive not to be. And I always tell people, and I carry this with me in life in general, because I feel that oftentimes there's that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? And I think there's a lot of people that keep that card close to their heart, because they feel like if they are to learn something new, it's like a sign of weakness. You know, anything I do in life, if I've never experienced it, I don't care if it's in the firefighting and I have a rookie show me something that I hadn't seen, or if it's in jiu-jitsu and a white belt does a move and I'm like, oh, show me that. I've never seen that. Like, my students come up to me all the time. Hey, coach, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I'm like, oh, wow. You know, whereas every time I would show a technique, it was kind of like there always had to be something added to it, right? There was always, it was never like, oh, that's good. It's like, oh, yeah, you can do that, but look at this. And, but yet it was never like, hey, I've been working on this. Let me show you. And, you know, maybe it's just because of the mentality that was in the gym at that point.
Well, and to your credit, I guess you recognized that early, right? And said that you were going to be a certain way. I mean,
yeah, I remember one time it stuck out the most. I was already several years in. I might have already even been a black belt, but I was sparring with somebody and they kept catching me with a certain move. And I said, man, how do you, once again, humbling myself, I said, what am I doing wrong? Why can't why do I keep getting caught? I keep getting caught here. And they said, all right. And they got close to me and they said, I'm going to show you something that somebody else showed me, but don't show anybody. And I'm like, and it was literally like so minor, but it made such a huge difference in pulling off the technique.
Yeah.
Right? And so at that moment I was like thankful, but then I sat back and I'm like, don't show anybody else. Like, why wouldn't I want these guys that I'm coaching or guys that I'm helping? I always say, I want my students to submit me. Like, when I get caught by my students, it's frustrating. But it's also like, man, I'm proud, right? Yeah. Like, and I make them work for it. Like, the other day I got caught by a kid, Devin. I just gave him his blue belt in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And I hadn't told anybody this, and so if he's listening, he'll like this. But I was giving him situations where he could catch me in an armbar. Yeah. But I wasn't able to get out, right? Like, I'll let you put me in an armbar, but I'm not going to let you finish it. I'm going to work out of it, right? Right. Well, as soon as I went to work out of it, he transitioned to where he was breaking my grip, and I was like, oh shit. And the stubborn part of me was like, don't tap. But I felt my arm and I was like, nope, okay, I got to go to work. You know? Yeah. So I tapped, and like, I'm proud of that because that shows his progression. Sure. And in reality, like, I'm not winning anything. I'm not losing anything by being on those mats. I'm putting in the extra work, and we're growing and we're progressing as a team. So, you know, for me, being selfless in the aspect of helping these guys get better, it's twofold. But to say that it's completely without reward or like I'm not getting anything from it, you know, that's false. Like, even in teaching, like, I get paid to teach, right? I do a job, but it's the hours that people don't see. And I have a friend of mine that told me something a while back, and it makes sense. You know, for a lot of years he went to tournaments and paid with his own money, his own hotels, his own bills. And then he said, man, they don't pay us to coach them at tournaments. Like, they pay us to teach them jiu-jitsu. And we have our hours that we teach jiu-jitsu. Anything extra you do that's because you want to do it. And I understand, because he's been doing it a long time, much longer than me. Yeah. I'm not there yet. But I do tell my students, like, I can't make any tournament, like every single tournament. I have to miss. Yeah, you have to work also. I have to work. I can't afford sometimes to just like up and go when we've got other things. My kids are involved in other sports. But I try to be there as much as possible. Sure. And when I can't be there, it does kill me, you know. But to answer Erica's question, I just really feel like I am the way I am because I'm thankful and grateful for so many people that have given me that back, you know.
And in the fire service, you know, I can speak to that. It's like, we're public servants. And I mean, that's like a hard concept for some people to understand. And we ask, you know, new firefighters, like, what's your definition of a public servant? I mean, this is something that we signed up to do, right? No one came to me, and recruited me to come join the fire department. Like I went and applied, and like I knew I wanted to do. So like as far as, putting our needs and desires aside, I mean, this is what I desire to do. Like, it's not that I don't have to put anything aside. Like this is kind of what you described as like a calling. Like this is what, I wake up in the morning. It's like, man, I'm ready to go to work, and that's what I enjoy doing.
But you do put things aside in the fact that you are away from your family.
Oh yeah.
That you are away from your, your
I guess where I'm going with that, and like any job, you are away from your family, right? So it's like, this is the job that we chose. Right. And I just happen to enjoy doing it, and so it's like, it's not even, I've never looked at it like that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But really,
you've
really
never
good.
Felt, well, because you never
really
felt
question.
entitled. You've never felt entitled, right? Like that's my thing is like, you always seem like you're ready to work. You're happy to be at work. You're like, yeah, you're going to have busy nights. You're going to have shitty nights. You're going to have bad calls.
Oh, yeah.
But you're also like what you're getting back from it. Like you enjoyed it.
And know? I've always told people, like we talk to like other people at work, and I've always been at a station or around coworkers where I liked being at the station. So it's like when I'm in the morning and I'm driving to work, it's like I'm excited, right? Like I'm gonna go to work. And sometimes it like breaks my heart sometimes when I'm talking to somebody about the fire department, and usually they have something else going on in their life, and they're like, man, I just don't feel like being at work. I just don't. I'm just not there. And it's like that breaks my heart because it's like I've never had to deal like, man, I'm going to work. Like it's great. Like it's time to go. And so for everybody it's different, but I hope that kind of gives some insight. But we're public servants. We signed up to do this, and that's absolutely what we.
So let me turn it back on you then.
The public, right?
Like Eric was asking me, but so when you got into the fire department, was that one of your reasons? Was because you wanted to serve your community? Yeah.
So for me, for a long time, I thought I wanted to be a police officer. I was like, man, I was a police explorer. I was like, that's what I was doing, and I have a story to share with that. It's like. We were doing ride outs. I would do a ride out as a high school kid. I would do ride outs with police department. And as you know, on EMS calls, like the law enforcement goes oftentimes. Yeah. So we're like responding to like a EMS call, right? And even the police officer I was with, and I cannot recall who it was, if he's still in the police department or not, because it was here in the city. And it was like, we got to make these EMS calls. We got to help these firemen out, we got to make sure they're safe, right? And so it was already kind of like, like,
talking shit.
Talking shit back then, right? So I was like, oh, okay, that should be interesting, And so we got there first. The police car got there first. There's a lot more officers out patrolling around than there are medic units, especially back then. And so we go and try to see what's going on. And like right off the bat, like we're met with like aggression. Like, we didn't call you. Why are you here? I need an ambulance. I don't need police officers. Like the public, particular citizens were upset that they were there. Yeah. And they're like mean mugging me and him. And it's like, man, it's like, what?
Like, do I really want to do this?
Yeah. And so then in rolls a fire truck and an ambulance. Babies are smiling. Girls are blowing kisses. And I said, I want to do that. Yeah. Not that.
Hey, that's
different. It's a different. They're very. I mean, when people are inviting us in their homes, people are. I mean, and maybe it's where we're from. We had this conversation with John, Varial, when he was on the podcast, and it was like, man, people come. Like, we get officers from other parts of the country to come do training here, and they're like, man, this is weird. People are like smiling at y'all and saying hi to y'all. So it's just different, And in Texas in general, right? People are friendly and they love their public servants, So that was my story. Like I recognized, I think this is better suited for me. And man, I was just like, no looking back. Like that was, I never even applied for the police department. I applied for the fire department, got in the first time I was young, when I was applying, I was like 19 years old, turned 20 during the application process and got in, and I was like, it was great. It's been great ever since.
That's awesome, man. I didn't know that story, so that's cool.
Yeah, and you see it today. I mean, you make calls and they get upset. The poor officers didn't do nothing wrong. They're just showing up, just doing their job, right?
And it's stand up for them, but damn, you're right.
So great question, Erica. Thanks for the insight. That's made us think about that one. All right, Israel, and I think I know Israel, and man, he's a beast himself. And this question is from his perspective for sure. If you were given the option to trade places with someone who has a physical impairment for one day, What would you want to know? No. Would you want to know what it felt like to train jiu-jitsu knowing that you can't pull off every technique due to that impairment? Just food for thought. Why do so many rely on motivation when what they really need is to develop discipline? I guess it's a two-part question.
Yeah,
there at the end.
I think, and I had asked Israel about that because Israel, shout out to Israel. He is one of my students, and he, you know, for a lot of people that don't know, those that work with him, Israel does have
It's a disability.
yeah, he has a disability. I believe it's with his left leg. I believe.
Yeah.
It's one of his legs. Anyway, he had an accident when he was younger, and he was actually told he was never gonna be able to walk again. And then he did. And then Israel's story is kind of cool because it's really cool actually, because he was one of these guys that he was overweight, you know, and then he just got to a point in his life where he was tired of it. And it's funny with Israel, I would always see him come in, and his son did our jiu-jitsu class and our kickboxing class, and then did our wrestling program. And then his son got into high school and started wrestling, and Israel would do the wrestling program, you know. And I always thought, man, that's cool. This dude's in there with his
son.
You know?
Yeah, that is cool.
And then he just decided to try jiu-jitsu one day, and man, his story is cool because the guy, and I tell people all the time, he goes to work out at Hybrid with Santos.
Yep. Yeah, that's where I know him from.
He goes to work out there at like 5 a.m, almost every morning. He's one of the regulars. And then he comes to do jiu-jitsu in the evenings after work. And dude, Israel, it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter. He doesn't want, number one, he don't want people to go light with him. Right?
No.
Number two, he pushes himself daily and gets submitted, gets right back in there. Submits people, gets right back in there. Like, no matter how good of a role or bad of a role it is, he always comes back, and he always keeps that positive mindset and that no quit attitude. And I tell people all the time, I say, man, if he's able to do it, there's no excuse that you guys aren't. So I had asked him that question. That I said, man, can you kind of clear this up for me a little bit? And what he was saying was more of this, what he's trying to get out there was basically like, you know, there's people like himself that have a disability. And he says, well, what about if you were to be healthy one day and the next day you can't walk? The next day you can't use your right arm. The next day you can't, you know, see or talk or something. Like, how hard would that be for you to keep going and to keep that same mindset? And it goes along with what we said with like how we push ourselves, right? It's always easy when everything is going your way. But what do you do when shit hits the fan? What do you do when you do get in an accident and you can't, you know, live your life the way that you normally do? Do you just fold under the pressure, or do you persevere and find solutions instead of just looking at the problem in front of you? Right. And so for Israel, you know, I commend him, and I don't know what it would be like. I tell people all the time, I say, man, the day that I am not able to work out and do jiu-jitsu and stay busy, like, I'm going to have to find something else to put my time into, because, you know, I'm working through a lot of these demons and vices and struggles that I have inside during those times. And to go from being able to work out twice a day and compete to just having that all taken away, I mean, that's got to be the hardest thing ever to deal with, you know?
Yeah, what comes to mind specifically with jiu-jitsu is like John Chalk's story. You know, it's like you know, it's like, man, talk about not letting it hold him back.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's like, you want to explain, like, he's like world class.
Yeah.
You know?
So John Jacques Machado is like one of the originals, like the OGs. Everybody hears about the Gracies, but the Machado,
and he's related to the Gracies.
Yeah,
so
they're right up there with them, right? And he doesn't have
probably has like a smaller right hand.
Like, yeah, like he doesn't have a right hand to grip with.
Yeah,
it's his limb
like
is
a
short.
nub or something.
It's like a nub. Yeah, it's like he has his arm, and then probably about halfway down his forearm, you
never see it too. He always poses like he covers it.
And he actually
born that way, right? From birth.
Yeah, and into a family that is not only good at jiu-jitsu, but was like
It's great. Yeah.
Was the reason why jiu-jitsu is what it is. One of the reasons, right? And he excelled. He became a world champion in the gi. He went to Abu Dhabi and he won there, which is a no-gi competition. And he just adapted. He learned how to adapt. And that's the thing. We talk about perseverance and overcoming adversity, but that's really when you're faced with it. And one of the guys that we just talked about, or that you had brought to my attention, is that Nicholas Lavery.
Oh yeah, Nick Lavery. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's a guy that went from being a special service.
He's a Green Beret. He's a Green Beret. And now he's an officer. He's a captain. He's a Green Beret captain.
But he had his leg blown off, right? Or he had his leg shot off.
Yeah.
And now he's the first active duty Green Beret that's
amputee.
Yeah. And his amputation is like all the way almost up to his hip.
Yeah.
So his leg's like completely missing, and he has a prosthetic that he.
If you have a chance to look him up, I mean, it's just an amazing story. And he went through dive school. He finished his academic career to be an officer. He's done all. He didn't let that stop him, right? He kept moving forward. He's like continued to like do things in the military, stay in the military he could have left. He could have easily said like, I'm done,
Yeah.
And he chose to stay in.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's just a great story, but he didn't let it hold him back.
And that's the thing that goes to people like Israel, getting back to him and how he's pushing through and persevering. And not only is he doing well, he's really excelling.
Yeah.
He's lost a lot of weight. He's kept the weight off. He's living a healthier lifestyle. He's happier mentally.
Yeah.
He's in a good space. And
when you have those things going for you, it's like everything else will fall into place, in your life. It's like,
well, the thing about what he has gone through is it really puts things in perspective for me. And I try to preach this to my students, but I tell everybody, you guys are able-bodied. You're able to do things that a lot of people aren't able to do. There's so many people out there that wish that they could run and roll and that they had the ability to come into a gym like ours and train on a regular basis. And we take that for granted. We take advantage of that. We think that tomorrow is guaranteed that we're going to be able to do jiu-jitsu, and there isn't, not one. So now I believe Israel had what was the second part?
Second part just said is why do so many rely on motivation when what they really need to develop is discipline? It's been a topic of ours before, right? Motivation comes and goes.
Yeah, motivation is a feeling.
Yeah, motivation is a feeling. And I think, the best way to put it for Israel is like, you're answering your own question by what you're doing. He's instilled some discipline in his life, going to the gym early, doing his workouts, going to your gym in the evenings, 2 workouts a day, lost the weight, kept the weight off. That's all. That takes discipline. And that's what we should all take some notes on that,
Yeah, I'm going to be talking. I have the opportunity this Thursday, which is really cool, to be talking to Veteran Memorial High School football team at their dinner, their pregame dinner that they're doing Thursday night. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about is having that discipline, right? Because discipline is doing things that you don't want to do because you're supposed to, not because there's times where you wake up and that alarm clock goes off from 4 or 5 in the morning. It's like Jocko said, he doesn't think that he's tired. He doesn't cave into the feelings of, I don't want to do this. He just gets up and does it, because that's what being disciplined is, right? When we work out every day off, it's not. Sometimes
you don't feel like it.
I don't feel like working out, but you know what? That's just a part of what we're supposed to do. And being disciplined goes much further than eating right and working out. Being a good husband, being a good spouse. I know plenty of guys out there that aren't. And part of being a good spouse is being disciplined. There's going to be times where you are tempted to do things, and first of all, you should never put yourself in a situation where you are, but there's going to be times where that temptation comes and you don't act on it because you're disciplined as a man, as a husband, not to, right? When it comes to your kids, spending time with them, There's going to be times where you're tired and you're exhausted, but you still make the effort.
Yeah, you have to, man.
You have to.
Your time with them is limited. As my kids have gotten older now, man, it's like it's cliche to say that they're gonna grow up so fast, but
they do.
People say that for a reason because they do.
I feel it now more than ever. Having Cynthia only half the time.
Yeah.
I realize
every time you see her is like she's
like I realize, and I realized how much time I took advantage of early on, and
how much time you took for granted early on? Is it like the time with her? Yeah,
took for granted.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you didn't.
I took advantage of the time I had with her in the sense where, it was like I didn't.
But her always being there, that's something that's like you it's like she's we'll hang out later, we'll do things. Exactly. But it's like, man, it's not always the case.
Now it kills me if I have like a busy week and I tell her we're gonna do something and we can't do it. The other day it broke my heart, man, because she won or she was voted president of her student council, 5th grade.
Yeah, congratulations.
That was an awesome thing for her, and she was excited. And I told her, we're gonna celebrate. We're gonna get you a cake, and we're gonna. And dude, the weekend was so busy, and we had a football game with Kaylin, and then we had something else going on, but it was just a hectic weekend. And by the time the weekend was over, it was like she was telling me on the way to school, we never got my cake, and I was like, oh my god, fail as a dad, right? so I made sure the other day I went and I got her these damn Smushmallows. They're like fucking expensive. They're just damn pillows, but. The kids love them, so I got her a Smushmallow and then bought her a little cake, and that's all it took to make her day. So it's doing those things that also made my day, seeing her reaction.
Sure.
But you got to take advantage of the time and being disciplined and motivated. Two totally different things. I always tell people it's like, and I'm going to tell this to these kids because it's funny. They're bringing me in. They say, we always have a motivational speaker. And I'm
so you need a discipline speaker,
you need a discipline speaker. Fuck motivation, because motivation is cool when you're motivated. But what do you do when you're not? Right?
Yeah.
It's easy when you're motivated to want to do something, but when you're not motivated, that's when your true character shows.
Sure.
Right? And that's what we talk about. I was talking about relationships and being disciplined as a husband, but it's like we've talked about it before, where it's you when you first meet your wife. You're trying to do all the bells and whistles,
best you, right?
The best version of you. And then as the years go on, you start to take that for granted, right?
Yep.
So you have to remain disciplined in certain aspects of your life. And I think in all aspects of your life, we're going to always fall off. But that's the other thing. It's like, just because you fall off doesn't mean you can't get back on. Don't stay off.
You recognize it and you fix it.
And you fix it. Absolutely. And being disciplined is definitely one of the key things I try to live my life by now.
Yeah.
And I've seen the results, and they don't lie.
You can't even think of living any other way at this point. Once you get into it.
I mean, it's tempting at times to be like, oh fuck it, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that, or I'm just gonna chill. And don't get me wrong, every now and then I fall off the wagon, like I said.
Well, and we talk a lot about working out, so it's like you miss a workout. So what?
Yeah.
Don't miss 2 in a row.
Right.
It's like, okay, like tomorrow, like we're doing it, you know, and that I think is what usually you fall off, you get back on.
Yep.
You fall off, you get back on, and that just, that's life. I mean,
and that's a good way to put it. It's life, because you have to be able to not beat yourself up.
Because you could take it to the extreme and then you have a terrible day because I missed my work. It's like, that's not going to happen either. It's like, hey, we'll get it tomorrow, but we're going to do it tomorrow, So great question, Israel. Thank you for that. And you keep killing it. You're disciplined, man. You're doing it right. Last one, Vanessa, number 4. Thoughts on separation of church and state.
Oh, shit.
End with that.
Yeah. That's going to be a good one, right?
Yeah.
Today we listen to a lot that's out there. And I always tell people, I say, I believe what I believe. I believe in, Christ. I consider myself a Christian. Do I consider myself an exemplary Christian? No.
Striving to be, maybe?
Yeah, well, because at one time I feel I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. Praying every day, reading the Bible every day, having those talks with God, And to be honest, I got away from it, and I got away from it when I started falling off the wagon a little bit, going through a divorce and partying, drinking, doing things,
When
more
in
than
reality,
what I
like things like big life changing things like that would probably be the time that you.
well, and that's exactly the thing, is the sense of guilt that we feel, right? Oftentimes as Christians, and this is not to get off the question, but just to kind of a subset here is like, I think people don't realize exactly what you just said. That is the time when you're supposed
Need it the most.
to go to God. Like, church isn't for the broken. I mean, church isn't for the saved. Church is for the broken. Church is for the people. Like, that's what makes believing in Christ so special, is that no matter how far away you go, he's never
You can always lean
far.
on.
He's never far away. No matter how far you go away from him, he's there to welcome you back with open arms every single time. But you have to go back, right?
Yeah.
So for me, and the reason I bring this up is because we are getting into that topic, and that talks about different things. We talk about gay marriage, we talk about abortion,
Roe versus Wade.
Those,
Yeah.
those are the two topics I think that she's probably really, really aiming on with this question. And I have my beliefs, but my beliefs, I've always told people, my beliefs are my beliefs, and my beliefs are not for me to hate somebody else because they believe differently. My beliefs, I should be able to have a conversation with somebody that doesn't share the same beliefs or mindset as me, and still respect them. So for me, and this is where it gets a little muddy, the waters, right? Is I don't, and I might get some flack from people that are Christian on this aspect, but I truly don't feel that the government should step in, because I feel that we're all going to have to answer at some point for our decisions. And so if somebody's doing something wrong, abortion, for instance, right? We have so many people, and it's funny now because Ashley, very much so, if I just said it last episode, to each their own, like, hey, what happens if this, what happens if that? And it's funny because in that topic, people always run to the smallest question, right? What if somebody was raped? When rape's actually 1%, less than 1% of abortions happen because of rape. Let's talk about the 85% of abortions that happen because women are having sex with people and they're getting pregnant before they're ready to accept that responsibility, right? That is the majority. That may be how I feel. It's hard for me to see where the state should stop getting involved, right? The whole abortion thing is so crazy, and it's the reason I say, like, just let everybody do, and I feel that way about everything. Like, drugs is another thing. I feel like legalize all drugs, and if somebody wants to go and overdose and kill themselves, then survival of the fittest. That's on you. That's not on the government, right? Tax. They make a big deal about marijuana and about all these drugs. Put taxes on them. Let people buy them as they want to buy them, and if somebody wants to, we legalize alcohol. How many people coming up in the department have you seen that are alcoholics killing themselves, literally killing themselves, and it's illegal, right? Nicotine is shown to cause cancer. Like, so, it's at what point do we just step back and let them touch the hot stove?
Yeah, it's a tough one, man.
That's it. It really is, because I can see where the abortion, in my opinion, yeah, you are, Ashley does these updates every week, and she says, oh, the baby's this size now, the baby's that size now. And so at 7 weeks, the baby was already the size of an olive, developing a heart, having eyelids. Like, it's a growing being inside of her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of times women don't find out they're pregnant till 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
So now you're getting into a topic where it's like, well, man, that's so crazy because, yeah, some people are going to say, yeah, you're murdering an innocent life. And then some people are going to say, oh, that baby doesn't have, it's not a being until it's born. And so to Vanessa, I just got to say that I try to stay out of that area. And I really, in this sense, I really do preach to each their own, like Ashley says, because I know at the end of the day, when I take my last breath and my life ceases to exist, my soul is going to go somewhere, and I'm going to have to answer for everything that I did here on this earth. So I believe that everybody's going to have that. And I just hope that everybody realizes that before they make whatever decisions they decide to make. So I think the sad part is that the government has made this church and state thing more of a political stance.
Sure.
Than anything else. Yeah. And that has pitted us against each other, when in reality we all just have to be able to respect each other's decisions and this is my family, I'm going to do within my family as I see fit. You know what I mean? Actually, I've talked about it and said, God forbid, what if something happened to Cynthia? And I said, well, my belief is I would deal with it, because the last thing I would want is for her to get an abortion, even if she was 14, 15 years old. Like, God forbid, right? Knock on wood. But, that's just my belief. If your family believes differently, then we should be able to freely discuss our opinions with each other and still come to a understanding at the end of that, even if there's differences, I mean, how do you feel about that whole, and not getting into like anything specific, but
yeah.
just,
well, and I'll just like go on one specific deal and like talking about schools, it's like with everything that's going on in schools, active shooters. I mean, we had a scare in our town, and it was like wound up being nothing, thank God, but it could have been something crazy, and it would have been just, and so like, no church in schools. So like you're saying, after one of those shootings that kids can't pray at the school. I mean, this is like winds up being like where these kids died.
Right.
And so it's like, you're going to tell a class that they can't like say a prayer for their classmates. Like, maybe a little Jesus in schools would help some of these situations.
Exactly.
So that's my take on it, and that's just, it gets to where all the attention gets like towards the squeaky wheel, right? It's the minorities that are minority instances. It's like, we have to not allow this to happen. And it's like, why not? Like, it's like,
well, and I think, and this is probably getting off the question a little bit, but I think we have to get back to a point as a majority where we are able to speak our mind without fear of, oh, they're going to say something.
You can't
about
say that, or you can't do that.
Yeah,
or you can't,
I mean, that's why, and
especially when it's about church.
Yeah,
like,
I've had people say that about the podcast. They're like, man, I can't. It's just a matter of time before I get called in the office for you. And I say, here's the thing, man. I said,
well, first of all, why are they going to get called in the office for what you're saying? It's like, that's
exactly.
Stupid to begin with. So it's like you said, you have to answer for you got called to those, like, you have to answer for what the words that you say and the things that you.
And I truly believe, like, I don't believe that anything I say is sexist. I don't think anything I say is racist. I don't think anything I say is
well. At least
so
that's
outlandish.
not the intent. Someone
you can twist anything,
and
right?
you can interpret it the way that you want. But it's like what we're trying to do here is not call anyone out. We're not trying to say that we're right and you're wrong. We're not. It's not at all what we're trying to do.
No, we're promoting the standards of which we live our lives in a lot of these situations, and we're getting different outlooks from different people on the many different aspects and topics that we've approached and brought up,
and pretty much the pursuit and like striving to like, if we're not by any means doing everything the perfect way. Like, I'm trying to be better still, like in this, you're trying to be better.
Well, I
like,
think that's the funny thing. And we talk about it. I've talked about it with some of my friends and stuff. And it's like, anytime you make someone else feel inadequate because of what you're doing, they automatically take a defensive stance,
defensive, get defensive,
right?
Yeah.
So it's like
human nature.
anytime I tell people you shouldn't be doing this, it's funny because I wrote a post yesterday and Ashley always gets, she's, babe, are you talking about me? And I'm like, and she, you know, we deal with it within our own relationship. But I had made a comment about something like, if the only hardship you face is deciding which episode of Netflix to watch at the end of the day, well, it just so happened that she had just, and let me preface this by saying, you know, this first trimester, she's been extremely tired. Extremely tired. Like it's been rough for her. So she's been watching a little more TV than what is normal, you know, for her. And it was just funny because as soon as I wrote it, she's like, was that about me? And she's telling me from the other room, and I'm like, what are you talking about? She says, well, I'm over here watching this Dahmer. It was the Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh, yeah, you were telling me about that one.
And she's binging on it.
Sure.
And I'm like, babe, no, it's not. It's not.
Hey, you know,
but I laugh because it's funny how like the timing of that was just perfect. It couldn't have been more perfect to make her think that it was about her, but it's not. It's just,
well, and that's one of those things too. Like that's a release. You know, that's like, you know, some people, me included, you know, if I get into a show or something, it's like, man, that's like, you're not thinking about anything else. You're just like being entertained by this program or and for me, like documentaries or whatever, like some sports documentaries, like I like that, or crime TV or whatever. You just like get into that. You can focus on that and kind of a stress reliever. So like, I would never knock anyone. I mean, that's not, you know.
Now here's the thing. She's productive. She's a productive individual.
Yeah,
she was out, and she's out, and she's always doing stuff for her daughter, my daughter. Yes. She's running errands for the family. Like she's constantly doing stuff. She's not just at home.
It's not like an addiction.
So there's a difference. And now let's say that because there is an issue with people that want to sit on their butts for 8 hours throughout the week, every other day or every day, and they're not doing anything positive, right? They're not doing anything, I shouldn't say positive, but productive, right? We have to be productive in what we do. So, you know, you got to find balance.
It's balance, man.
You can't, and that's one thing we were talking about, discipline, and it's like, it's not just about being disciplined and not deviating from that discipline every single day. Because I will tell you,
you can't be.
When you do that, and you are that disciplined all the time, you are missing out on other parts of your life. And yes, it requires sacrifice. It requires discipline to be great. But looking back, I would say I was so disciplined and I was so strict with myself when I was coming up in my fighting career that when I made it to UFC, I didn't stop to look around.
Sure.
I didn't stop to appreciate. I always told Rudy, like,
you were looking at the next thing. You were like already like move forward.
What's the next fight? Like, or I had to appear like, and I told Rudy, I said, we got to act like we've never been there. Like we've been here before. Yeah. I don't want to be this fanboy that's like here, like, hey, can I take a picture with you? And I would literally see some of my favorite fighters walking by and be like, fuck, I want to take a picture with him, but I can't, you know? And now I look back at it and I'm like, I never got to absorb enjoy it to that extent, you know.
That's hindsight, man. That's hindsight. Yeah. That's
But so now I try to apply it to my life in general.
Well, that's what we're talking with the kids earlier. Like you have to enjoy those moments with the kids.
Like you have to be disciplined in your life, but discipline, what does Jocko say, equals freedom, right? So when it comes down to it, if you're disciplined in the majority of your life, you have some areas where you can afford to be a little lax. And that's where, you know, sitting down and watching some TV or getting on YouTube or, you know, just
whatever that is for you,
whatever it is, you know, whatever it might be, it's okay. Don't feel bad about doing it. And we're not here to make people feel bad.
No.
What we are here to do is give you a little kick in the ass if you need it, and show you that, hey, you've got to work at some point.
Yeah.
And if you're content with just being where you're at, then great. But if you want to be better, like, it's not just going to come fall in your lap. You got to earn that shit, you know? So, well, T.
That was all of them. That's cool, man. That's good.
Yeah,
let's get some more.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and do this every other month. I'm gonna put it out there for you guys. You know, any questions you might have, and like some of these questions were asked like a month ago. So like, if you have any questions, what I do is I save them. And so if there's something that you hear or that we talked about on this podcast,
or if you have a question for one of the guests we had, You have a question for one of the guests, because we'll reach back out to them, or we'll bring them back on.
We'll bring them back on. Exactly. That's a good point. So if I get enough people that are asking questions about
for someone specific,
then I might bring them back on.
Yep.
So that's definitely a good point. But thank you guys for tuning in. For y'all that don't know, I mean, some of y'all can only hear us, obviously, right? But we're going to be filming some of these podcasts, looking to upload them to YouTube. On that channel, we're going to also have some training videos from the fire department that I've already done. We're going to show some self-defense techniques that I'm going to film and put up there. So just keep an eye out for all the content that we're going to be bringing. Appreciate the love, appreciate the support. And for the CTL podcast crew here in studio, thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, we'll catch you on the flip side.